Hey, Joyful Journeyer. I'm Anita Adams, your host, and I'm honored to welcome a guest who truly leads with heart and purpose. Tanya Chomyk is an author, life transition expert, award winning resilient speaker, educator, and coach who has spent more than 30 years helping people navigate life's most challenging moments with clarity, courage, and compassion. Her work is shaped by both deep professional expertise and profound personal experience. After the unexpected loss of her infant son, her life shifted forever, leading her on a path dedicated to intentional healing and supporting others through grief, major life transitions, and rediscovering who they are. She is the author of Bringing Light to Loss, a deeply moving reflection on grief, love, and resilience that it takes to build a life. A portion of the book's proceeds support the Child Life program at Montreal Children's Hospital, honoring her son's legacy by bringing comfort and joy to children and families. Tanya holds degrees in education and is a certified professional coach. Throughout her career, she has held leadership roles at McGill University and Concordia University, where she helped develop transformative programs in wellness, leadership, and purpose-driven career growth. Today, she continues to guide people through grief, loss, and life's hardest transitions, reminding us that resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. In today's conversation, we'll talk about navigating grief and loss and how we can move forward with intention, compassion, and hope. Welcome, Tanya. So delighted to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Anita, for having me. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So, for those who are just meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about your journey of loss and healing and how it ultimately led you to the work you're doing in the world today?
Sure. Thank you. Loss has been a big part of my life. And I think that loss is something that we all experience. It's just a universal thing. And no matter what kind of loss, we're all going to experience something profound, something deep. And for me, that happened when I was about 33 years old. I became a grieving mother, and that shook me to the core. And it really changed my life forever. And when I think about how the healing was for me, which took time, took a lot of time, I discovered that writing became my solace. And I realized that a few years after my son passed, I found myself in a learning environment at McGill University doing a master's degree in education, human relations, and family life. And I didn't know at the time how much that process helped me in my healing. Because in that program, I needed to write papers. I did a course on family life and marriage. And as much as I was passionate about balancing career and family, something kept propelling me to write about grief. And I think that was the first time that I shared my story with my professor. I took Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's Stages of Grief, and I imposed my story throughout this paper. And I remember my professor giving me back this paper, and it was called Life After the Loss of a Child. And he said it was one of the most poignant papers that he had read. And it's interesting how that journey of healing for me started with the writing and just the sharing between a professor and myself. I didn't share that with the world. I wasn't ready for it yet, but it helped me in my own healing journey. And think about this. This was 27 years ago that my son passed away. And let's backtrack to that paper, and then let's fast forward to 20 years later, where I resurrected that paper and I ended up writing an inspirational speech to share the story in front of an audience. So it's like throughout my healing, I developed this voice to speak about it, which for the longest time, I pretty much kept it compartmentalized. And I brought it out only when it made sense to me. So it's like that paper, the writing, and then the speaking, and then it transferred into writing my memoir. which is bringing light to loss. And that whole process is almost 27 years. So it just goes to show how long that can take and what it means to create meaning from something that is so tragic. And so I realized that now this is my calling. This is my calling. It's creating meaning from the loss of my son and helping others find their joy, find their light in the face of all their losses.
It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tanya. And my deepest heartfelt condolences for the loss. I know it was 27 years ago, but that's still very present, very present. And it does take a lot of courage and strength to do the work you're doing. So thank you. And I think that lending a voice to that is in many ways a guiding light for others to help them find their voice, which I know is an important part of the work you're doing. So thank you. You share the
Thank you.
perspective that life's challenges aren't meant to be fought against, but understood as part of a larger unfolding. And I feel like you're touching on that and sharing your story a little bit. And that's the clarity that comes forward, right? So looking back now, what has unfolded since the loss of your son, in addition to the speaking and the writing and writing the book?
So what's unfolded for me is that I realized that life continues. That was the biggest realization for me, is that life is in flow. And the choice that I had with how am I going to continue to live that life, either in flow or in contraction. And so I chose to live it in flow. And I also became much more understanding that love never dies. So death is part of life and it's going to happen, whether it's something that happens to us unexpectedly or just is part of life, of course. And that's not something that we can control. So I made a conscious decision to say, how am I going to live this life and move forward? Because I realize that as long as I'm still living, there's a reason to continue. And so I see life now with a lot more gratitude. And I understand that the death, although Danilo had a short life, 6 months, that even though his earth suit, as I call it, is no longer here, but the love that I shared with him, that could never be taken away. And that's what I hold on to. So I feel his presence ever since I've been able to accept that. And he has been guiding me ever since. So that openness to accept that life happens, good things and bad things happen, but it's what you make out of it.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to get to this point of creating this meaning. And I think having that openness of realizing that his presence is here, that will never die.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm really curious about how is that showing up for you, his presence?
So initially, it didn't show up for me because initially I was struggling with faith. I was struggling with God. I was struggling with how could this happen? This is not supposed to happen this way. It was my 5-year-old daughter. She was one of my anchors. She would tell me after his passing, she'd say, Mom, she says, I saw Danilo. He came into my sleep. I heard him singing to me. And I'd be like, what? That just made me realize, not only did it bring tears, but it made me realize that he's never gone. Just because he's not here with us, his presence is always going to be there. And so from that moment, that's when I started realizing that, yes, if I'm open to this, I will also feel his presence, because I struggled for the longest time. And once I did that, Anita, it was like, I would have to take a double take. I'd be downstairs playing in the toy room with my daughter. And next thing, it's like, here. And it's like, he was with us. He was right with us. I had to look behind my shoulder, but it was so strong, that presence. And then as life would continue, he would show up in different ways. My daughter was 16 at one point, and we had just bought her prom dress. And we were driving, we got up on the highway, and there was an 18-wheeler that struck us. Either they didn't see us on our blind spot, and all of a sudden, they struck us, they swerved, the car totaled.
Wow.
We stopped in shock. I looked at my daughter. Thankfully, she was fine, burst into tears. I burst into tears, and then I looked up in the sky, and I saw his silhouette in the clouds.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was like, there was no way that we would be gone because it wasn't our time. And he was watching us. The car was totaled and we were fine. So throughout my life, I have so many examples of how he's showed up. So now I feel, in essence, I was chosen to give birth to this angel, to this soul who now is our guardian angel for life on earth. And so it's so powerful. And I think that's what's really helped me in this transformation. Took time to get there. But I think writing the book really helped me. And it's just illuminated things for me. And so I feel his presence. I talk to him. And it's just amazing to have that love stay with me forever.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story, and full on goosebumps everywhere as you share that story. You said that I am open to this. And I think that's probably key, that you're open to the idea and willing to accept this, your son in this form, in presence. Is there anything you can share that can help people get to that place of openness and willingness? Or is there other ways that somebody who might be listening to this who's experienced loss, that it can open that door?
So I think the first thing is that to allow yourself to really grieve, to go through that pain,
Okay.
to really feel the emotions and create that space for yourself and really not be influenced by what any other people tell you and how you should grieve, because that is so individual. And so I leaned into my faith at some point. And I think if we believe that there is a higher purpose, even if you don't feel it right now, it will come to you. We just need to be patient, and you need to trust that it'll come to you, because I didn't think that this would come to me in the way that it did. And perhaps throughout my childhood, I've always felt this sense of protection. And I would hold this encasement around myself to protect my peace. And this is how I always journeyed life. So a lot of it also comes back to your own philosophy and your own way of being and how you think of the world, because that's also going to help shape that. So if you're the type of person that you can see the silver lining, that you can find the joy even in the sorrow, give yourself time and it'll come to you. And if you're not the type of person that can find that joy in the sorrow, this is where the small little steps, the openness to finding something that you believe in, that brings you a smile to your face, is that first step to help you get there. But it really is about being open and receptive to what's going to come, and then how best to move with life and not fight it, because that really expands way too much energy. And I choose to be in the energy that brings me further to joy.
Yeah, I love that. Choosing to be in the energy that brings you further to joy. So instead of logicking that silhouette in the clouds, you chose to believe something else that brings you closer to joy. And I think in the process helps to strengthen that connection with your son. So
Yes.
it comes down to choice. Thank you for really making that clear. That's wonderful. You mentioned that your daughter was an anchor. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. Yeah. How,
Yeah.
because I know this is an important piece to have those anchors. So if you can maybe
Yeah.
define that a little bit and then talk a little bit more about how anchors can support you through a healing journey.
So I was, I guess, again, grateful that I had my 5-year-old daughter before when my son passed, because she's what kept me going. She's what kept me grounded. Waking up in the morning, getting her ready to school, and bringing her to school. All that gave me a sense of purpose. But I also found a way to balance that joy with the way I was grieving, because I would find moments where once she was in school, I found myself alone. And that's when I would spend time in his room and rock in his chair and hold onto his blanket and try to hold onto the scent of him for hours. And so I did the crying and I did the rocking. And then I had to regroup because I had to go back to school and pick her up. So she allowed me that space to grieve and then to
Yeah.
continue forward. And so she was my anchor. Faith was my anchor. Believing in angels.
Mm.
She opened that door for me. And then I think it was something that was always in there, but that really made me believe in the angels. And so I had that. Walking was really something that helped me too. I love to walk in nature. So movement, again, it goes to the whole notion of how do you choose to live life? Do you stay in flow of life? Because life is going to keep moving with or without you. And so nature and walking brought me into that movement, into that process. Writing was huge for me, also was one of my anchors. And being in learning environments, I think working at the university, studying at the university, I felt I was in a space where I could not only be me, but I was surrounded by knowledge. I was surrounded by a community that cared and that shared. And so environment was very big for me too. And I would always put myself in the environments where I felt I was getting what I needed. There was family and support, friends. You also learn a lot through this process of who are the friends that are there for you. And this is not to judge any of that, but we need to understand that friends don't know how to deal with someone who's lost profoundly like that, losing a child. And so sometimes they hold back. And I've learned to say that it's not about them. It's them not being able to know how to support. And so I never held any grudges. But what I did was I would end up being in the spaces that gave me the space for me to feel. And so eventually that changed too in terms of the friends. And they would all be open and honest and say that to me. I just didn't know how to support you, Tanya. And I was okay with that. So one thing we have to understand is that anchors, they don't remove the pain, but they give you something steady to hold on to.
Yeah.
And so that's the understanding, is that the pain will come and go. But if you have anchors, it just gives you something to hold on to steady. So again, you're moving along that journey.
Yeah. That's great. And that ties into my next question, which is, I know that one of your favorite quotes is by Aristotle, know yourself. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And I feel like you just shared the anchors. That's part of knowing yourself. It's knowing what you need. For you, you know that writing is something that helps you process, that being in nature helps to ground you. Is there anything else that you want to add to that, and why is self-knowing so essential when navigating grief and loss?
Yeah, thank you, Anita. So I think the reason why it's essential is that nobody knows you better than you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for sure. And you're going to grieve in your own way at your own pace. And that's how it should be. So if you can stay in your lane and not feel influenced by others, how they say, oh, you should be able to move on right now, or you should be, oh, you're still great. That you don't even want to hear those things, right? So knowing who you are, staying true to yourself is critical. And understanding that for me, I needed a balance of support and solitude. I knew when I needed to be alone, and I stayed alone, and I didn't let anyone infiltrate that. And I knew when I felt I wanted to be in company, and I honored that. So I didn't put myself in situations where I didn't want to be. And one thing about grief is that it doesn't go away. It visits you. It finds you unexpectedly when you don't even think about it, and it's just going to happen. And so understand that it's okay not to be okay. And it could happen 10 years later, 20 years later, you'll find yourself in a moment, and that's fine. So I built, and I would advise to build your own relationship with grief, because that's a relationship now that you have with grief. Because love and loss, they go hand in hand. This is it. This is what life is all about. Loss and love. And if we can build a relationship around the grief that goes with it, then we'll be able to process it in our own way.
So it's not, obviously, it's not denying grief. It's not pushing away grief. It's being with grief. I like that idea of having a relationship with grief. Even just saying, I see you. Here we are together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Very powerful. In bringing light to loss, you introduced the idea of clean pain and dirty pain. And I know this is an illuminating concept for a lot of people. Can you explain the difference between the two and how recognizing this distinction can change the way we move through grief?
Yes. So clean pain, that's the natural grief. It's the sadness, it's the crying, it's the missing, it's all of that. It's really hurtful. And dirty pain is the guilt, the why me? How can I get through this? I'll never be able to get out of this. And we say these stories, and I think it's important to have this distinction because people get overwhelmed with grief. And understanding the difference could perhaps help navigate this process. So when I learned from this concept, it was a real revelation for me because I understood now how some people stay in the dirty pain and some people can move in the clean pain. So what happens with loss is that if you hold on to the shame and to the blame and you stay in this victim kind of mode, often with loss, it triggers your past. It triggers kind of these generational other beliefs that you had. And then grief becomes heavier because what you've done is you've layered on top of. So you're grieving right now someone who passed. And all of a sudden, you're bringing back all the other trauma or the pain that you've had from other losses on top of it. And so you're no longer grieving for that person. You're grieving for everything else that was unresolved. So it becomes a lot heavier and you're almost not able to separate. And so it becomes heavier. The past pain piles on, and the awareness, understanding when you're in that frame really helps the pain without feeding into the old story. So if we feed the old story as part of the pain, that's what it becomes. So it's almost like the healing will only start really beginning when the past stops hijacking the present. So that's what it is. You're bringing your past trauma into this moment. And if you're able to separate that, that's when real healing begins.
And I can imagine that it would be a lot harder to have a relationship with, your language, a relationship with grief if it's the dirty grief. But having a relationship with clean grief, it would be a lot easier. So has to take a lot of self-awareness for one to really see that there's these layers, as you call it, of pain that is happening.
And let me just add one more thing, Anita, to that is that we're going to get in the dirty pain. That's normal. I got in the dirty pain. I was feeling guilty. My son passed away in his crib. I'm his mother. I should be able to protect him. Why didn't I check on him? So the dirt pain comes, but how long do you allow it to stay? That's the question, right? So natural shame, blame, and guilt, that's all part of the grieving. That's the 5 stages of grief. It's there, but you move from it. Some people stay in it. And when they stay in it, that's when the grief becomes dirtier and the pain becomes dirtier and then it becomes heavier. So it's a conscious decision to say, I'm going to leave that alone now. I'm not going to blame myself anymore because there was nothing I could have done to prevent that. And so that was me, again, back to the self-awareness, having these discussions with my inner self because I was blamed. And I had to compartmentalize that. And I know it came from not a good place because we were all grieving as the family. But I did get those things that, why didn't you check up on him? Or so I had to deal with that. And so it did stay with me for a while.
I can see that happening. I can see how the guilt and shame and past traumas, and then like I'm not a good mom, and all of that stuff could surface and how that can linger. And somebody's comment could just deepen that. And yeah, and I can imagine that could stay for a long time. Do you have to deal with the dirty pain first before you can deal with the clean pain, or is it happen simultaneously?
That's a great question. I think for someone like me who's been able to navigate that, it's again, it's going to come back to the person, but I think it could happen in both ways. Either, yes, there's stuff that you need to deal with from your past in order so that you can move forward with life, because there's a lot of things in life that are in the gray zone. And there are some people that are very much in the black and white. And the people in the black and white have a difficult time to be in the gray zone. So it's always trying to say to yourself, how do I get through this so that I can deal with the reality of life? Because there's going to be a lot of darkness and I got to get through it, right? So again, it becomes a choice. First an awareness, then a choice. And I think it can be done simultaneously.
Okay. You mentioned a moment ago your 5-step framework to support people through dramatic loss or major life transitions and changes. Can you walk us through that process a little bit? I feel like you've hinted at it in a few spots in this conversation already, but let's go through those 5
Sure.
steps and share how each step can support us over time.
Perfect. Yes. So the first one is for me was a safe space to feel. The emotions need to come out. We can't bury them. If you're going to cry 100 tears, don't stop at 50. Cry all 100. That's what you need. And honor what you need at the time. So when I needed to sit in my son's room on that rocking chair for hours, day in, day out, night after, I did what I needed to do. But eventually, I realized that I didn't have to be in his room anymore to connect with him. That's when I embraced knowing that he was my angel. So it does change. But I didn't deny myself that space. So that's the first thing, is find that space where you can feel wholeheartedly whatever that is, but it's your own sacred space. The second one leads to self-compassion. So be kind to yourself. There's no pressure. There's no timeline on the grief. And it will show up whenever it wants to. About 6 years after my son passed away, I was driving, going for an interview. It was a huge career move for me. It was like that next level. I remember it was a beautiful June day. I wore a baby blue suit and I was driving downtown. And all of a sudden, the song by Evanescence came on called My Immortal. And just like that, tears were rolling down my eyes uncontrollably. I couldn't even stop it. Yeah. And at one point, I looked up to the sky and I saw my son's silhouette. And in that moment, I said, oh my God, he's with me. He's telling me, Mom, you're going to be okay. You're going to get this interview. You're going to get this job. And so I kept driving. The song stopped. My face looked like a wreck. I got to the office. First thing I did was find a washroom, looked at myself, cleaned up my face, recomposed, went in for that interview, and lo and behold, I did get the job. So I allowed myself to cry. I didn't say, change the song. I stayed in it. I stayed in it because it was meant. I needed it. And from that compassion, from that self-compassion, then you find those moments of joy and gratitude. And that's leads to the third point, is finding those moments of joy and gratitude. And so I found the moments of joy, and then I was grateful. But I also had my daughter to create those moments of joy for me. And then God blessed me with another miracle when my second son was born. And so I had so much to be grateful for. And so that's the third step. The fourth step, I'd say, is seek connection when ready. I didn't put that as a first step. I put that as a fourth step, and that was intentional because it's when you're ready to seek that help. Not everybody wants to talk about it right away. You may want to stay in that grief for a while, and that's fine. So let it work for you when it does. And that's therapy, support, friends, support group, whatever that is. But take the time to embark on that and do it only when you're ready. And then, of course, you'll speak to the way I dealt with my pain as I paced it. I paced my pain. And healing's not linear. But when my son passed away on Remembrance Day, I knew that after the holidays, there was no way I wanted to stay home. I needed to get back. My daughter was in school. My husband was working. I don't want to be at home anymore. I don't want to be reminded all the time. I need to keep moving with life. And so I called my supervisor and I said, I'm ready to come back to work, but I don't want to come back to the department. I want to go back somewhere else. The university is huge. And there was a developmental assignment in the Faculty of Management. And he said, Tanya, wherever you want to go, we're going to support you. And so I chose to go to work in the Faculty of Management because I felt safe. I felt protected. I thought, they're not going to know so much about my life, and I'll be able to come in at my own pace. And so that's what I did, because the university is huge. So many people were at the funeral. And I thought, if I come to a department that doesn't know me so well, I can gradually just ease in. And that's exactly what I did. So the support was huge. And this speaks again to the environment that I worked in. So I got support in so many ways. McGill really was part of my transformation when I think about the writing, when I think about the courses, when I think about work, the support, the community. That was huge for me.
Yeah, I bet. So pacing your pain, it's not about controlling your pain. It's about, but there's other factors that you may have control around that will enable you to pace your pain. That's what I'm hearing. And you're nodding. So,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Awesome.
Absolutely.
I,
Exactly.
what I really love about this 5-step process is the spaciousness that there is in all of it. Safe space to feel, really important. Number 1, 2, be kind to yourself. 3, finding moments of joy and gratitude. You're slowing down. You have to slow down to be able to find moments of joy and gratitude. And I think that's key. Seeking connection when ready. I think that's beautiful too. You're not, again, forcing yourself. It's like, this is how I go through grief. I'm supposed to. This is what the experts say. This is the step I'm supposed to be doing now. Love that. And then pace your pain. Beautiful. These are great, a great framework for anyone that is going through something like this. So thank you. And on that, for someone who is perhaps in the early stages of loss and may not yet see the light ahead, what would you want them to know or gently hold on to?
The first thing is that you don't have to see the light right away, and that's okay. And to take that one breath, to take that one moment at a time, and to trust that healing is going to actually happen quietly. You may not even know it, but it's going to happen quietly every single day. There'll be something that will make you feel something is happening and that you are getting through it. And it's to trust that, to trust that. I'd say that the pain it doesn't go away, but it'll soften. And if you can open up the thinking behind that, the love will always stay. And realizing that, that could be extremely helpful in the process. And to know that you're not broken. This is just part of life. This is life showing us that pain is part of it, just as love is. And we can accept that love and loss go together, hand in hand. And that's what's going to help us motivate us to keep going every single day. And sometimes I say to myself, my son would not want me to suffer. My son would want me to live. My son would want me to share stories of him. And hence why this whole book and writing this book and partnering with the Children's Hospital, this is how I'm honoring his legacy. So it's like he's giving me this message that I wouldn't have had I not lost him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know that you would never want to wish this kind of pain on anyone, and yet I also see that you recognize the gift that has come through all the pain that you've gone through, and that's a beautiful thing to witness. So thank you. Do you offer one-on-one coaching or group coaching? Like, how if somebody's listening to this and they wanted to benefit from some of your expertise, what kind of work do you do with individuals?
So, yes, I do offer one on one coaching. I'm also very open to having coaching circles because I feel sometimes that women or just people want to get together within a community, having that shared experience. So, sometimes having those conversations. And what I've been known for is creating those safe spaces, really making people feel like they can be heard, they can be seen, and we're all in this together. No one is meant to journey life alone. We're meant to do it together. And so that's the kind of spaces I create. So happy to even be part of a circle, create a circle, offer the one-on-one coaching, or even coming to speak at any occasions where this conversation is needed. And I feel today more than ever, there's so many people struggling with loss.
Yeah.
And loss and grief is not just about death. It's about anything that's changed from what was to what is. And the book, hence why it took 27 years to write it, is that, yes, it speaks to the profound loss, but losing my son, Danilo, prepared me for all the other losses I would later face in my life, which was the dissolution of my marriage, big shift in my career, all those things. And so I was able to navigate that. So loss is bigger than just death.
Yeah, awesome. And of course, people can read your book, Bringing Light to
Yes,
Loss. Yeah. And Amazon, I'm assuming, is the place. And can people buy it off of your website as well?
they can buy it off Amazon, not so much on the website, but it's also an Indigo, a couple of Indigo books, but definitely from Amazon. That's the place to buy it.
We'll
Yes.
make sure we include the link in the show notes for both how to connect with Tanya through her website and various means, and then a link directly to her book on Amazon. So thank you so much, Tanya. It was so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for opening yourself up and sharing your story with us and the great advice and wisdom that you have to share with our audience. And Joyful Journeyer, thanks for tuning in today, for being with us as well. And if you know anyone that you think that this episode would resonate with, please do hit that forward button, share it with those that you love that could benefit from this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.